does it feel like we're suddenly seeing certain artists everywhere, even though they've been making music for years? Like Sabrina, Carpenter, Chappell, Roan, or Zara Larsson. Some of them have literally been in the industry for years or even a decade. But people only really started paying attention very recently. And I don't think that's a coincidence. Because the more I looked into it, the more I started noticing a pattern. And it's not always the most talented artists that break through first. It's the ones people can visually recognize instantly. And that's where things started to make sense for me. Because there are artists with insane vocals, amazing performance ability, strong lyrics that feel like they're kind of invisible in culture. And then someone else changes their look, has a viral moment online, and suddenly they're just everywhere. Not because they became more talented overnight, but because people finally understood how to see them. And honestly, I think Sabrina Carpenter is one of the best examples of someone that this happened with. Because Sabrina's career before the last 2 years is actually kind of fascinating. The talent was always there. She could sing, she could perform, she had like this incredible stage presence. She also had Disney visibility. She also did have some amazing songs like Vicious or Skin. But culturally, she was in this weird space where people knew her without really caring about her. And that difference matters a lot. Because modern pop culture is not built around recognition anymore. It is built around obsession, kind of. People do not just want music. They want a character, a vibe, like a personality they could instantly summarize in one sentence. And for a long time, Sabrina did not fully have that. Her earlier eras felt much more like talented pop girl than like a fully realized identity. And then the nonsense outros started happening.
God is giving me all the endorphins. Philly is the city I was born in.
Basically, it was just her changing the outro lyrics of the song at her concerts in a cheeky way every time. But culturally, that moment changed everything for Sabrina. Because suddenly clips of her started spreading online constantly. Not because people were talking about her vocals, but because people finally understood her personality. Like the cheeky sexual humor, the blonde bombshell image, the unserious flirtiness. Suddenly the internet could describe her instantly. She's the funny, slightly sexual, short and sweet pop girl. This alone created branding. And once people understood the character, the rest of the era exploded along with it. Espresso came, then the short and sweet visuals, the glossy curls, the tiny dresses. Even the album title itself sounds like a personality on its own. And what's interesting is that the actual talent did not suddenly appear during Espresso. The public perception kind of did. Which honestly says a lot about how audiences consume artists now. Because the talent only became fully visible after the aesthetic gave people a framework to process her. And then there's like Chappell Roan, who might honestly be the best example of this entire phenomenon right now. Because Chappell was not some overnight industry plant that suddenly appeared out of nowhere. She had been making music for years. She got signed young at 17 years old after popping off on YouTube. She already released several singles and she already had vocals and artistry. But her earlier image felt much more industry safe. Alternative pop girl, very polished in a way that made her blend into the background. And in today's algorithm culture, blending in is basically death. And then she got dropped by her label in 2020, though she had already released the now viral Pink Pony Club, which underperformed horribly at that time. And instead of trying harder to fit into mainstream pop, she went in the completely opposite direction. And this part is actually really important because her aesthetic was not random marketing. She has talked about how the theatrical hypercamp identity came from wanting to separate Chappell Roan from her as an actual person.
I would look at myself in the mirror and be like, what's the difference between Chappell and like...
It became a way to embrace queerness, drag culture, performance, and freedom of not taking herself too seriously. Like on Call Her Daddy, she mentioned how she wanted her aesthetic to be the hot girl at first, but she also never really felt like the hot girl in school.
But I wasn't hot in high school, like.
And honestly, I think that's why her new aesthetic connected so hard. Because people can feel when an aesthetic is just trend chasing versus when it actually means something emotionally to the artist as well. The campy outfits, the drag inspiration, the Midwest princess identity, the chaotic theatrical performances. She became impossible to confuse with anybody else. You could show a picture of Chappell Roan and everybody could tell this is Chappell Roan. And in modern pop culture, uniqueness is more valuable than perfection. That's also why the line, I'm your favorite artist's favorite artist, that she rephrased from the line, I'm your favorite drag queen's favorite drag queen, became so iconic and also went viral for so many reasons.
My name is Chappell Roan. I'm your favorite artist.
Because she transformed from talented niche singer into a mythical pop culture figure that also had like a clear visual identity. And what's fascinating is that people do not just consume her music anymore. They participate in her aesthetic. Fans show up dressed according to themes. They recreate looks. They also build a community around the visual world she created. And that is something talent alone usually does not achieve. Aesthetic creates participation, and participation is what algorithms love, after all. Now, Zara Larsson is interesting because I think with her we can see this transformation happening in real time in front of our eyes right now. Because Zara has honestly always had almost everything, but for a long time there was no super clear Zara Larsson universe at all. Everyone listened to the music, but you did not necessarily understand the identity around it or even know whose pop banger you were hearing on the radio in 2015. It has been so long. And now that finally seems to be changing. It all started with a dolphin meme.
Can you explain what's going on with dolphins and symphony?
No, I can't.
Then her glittery mermaid look, opening for Tate McRae in the USA, the hyper-glossy stage styling, and her sensual Scandinavian summer aesthetic that perfectly matched with her new Midnight Sun visuals as well. And after that, it only took the Lush Dance moment going viral online, similarly to Sabrina's nonsense outros. And those moments matter more than people realize. Because repetition creates identity, and identity creates cultural memory. Suddenly people are no longer just saying, Zara Larsson got some great songs. They are thinking, this girl has glittery ocean pop Scandinavian mermaid energy. Or something like that, I guess. And that is literally how modern branding works. Once audiences can summarize your vibe in one sentence and easily set you apart from others, your visibility changes completely. And honestly, I think the opposite effect happened with Katy Perry. Because Katy Perry is one of the best examples of what happens when the aesthetic coherence starts breaking apart. Teenage Dream worked because everything aligned. Like the visuals, the candy colors, the California fantasy, and of course, also the music videos. Even if you never listened to Katy Perry, you understood the world immediately. And then Prism still made sense as an evolution. It was slightly darker, more spiritual, but still with this clear visual direction in album visuals, music videos, and tour concept. It still felt emotionally connected to the Katy Perry people believed in. But then things started getting worse. Witness became a major turning point. And I think some people oversimplify why that era failed. It was not because she suddenly became untalented or because she suddenly forgot how to make great music. There are actually some really amazing songs on this album. The issue was the audience stopped believing the image. The purposeful pop branding, the drastic haircut discourse, kind of overshadowing the music, then the live stream, which was actually a really cool and different idea, but without any clear direction. And along with that, the awkward political messaging mixed with like bizarre performance art moments. And of course, who could forget the backpack boy? It no longer felt aligned with what people emotionally associated with Katy Perry. And once audiences stop believing the aesthetic, every visual choice starts feeling forced instead of iconic.
Can you see me?
And then Smile pushed it even further. The clown imagery genuinely became symbolic of how audiences viewed the era itself. It almost seemed like Katy Perry was clowning at this point. Well, like she was trying extremely hard to create visual moments without understanding why her earlier eras worked naturally. And by the time 143 came around, everything already disconnected. Random futuristic visuals, trend-chasing aesthetics, using AI-generated tour visuals, different identity fragments that never really formed one believable world. And what makes this fascinating is that Katy was actually trying very, very hard aesthetically, which proves an important point. The problem is not effort. The problem is alignment. People need to believe the aesthetic matches the artist. Otherwise, it starts feeling like random content instead of identity. And honestly, I think Meghan Trainor went through something similar on a smaller scale, because early Meghan had an extremely clear identity. The retro funky aesthetic, the body positivity messaging, people instantly understood her brand. Even people who hated the music understood the aesthetic immediately. But over time, the identity became less culturally defined, the music direction shifted, and the online persona became more influencer than pop star. The aesthetic world around the music weakened. And once the world weakens, the obsession weakens too. Because modern audiences do not just follow artists anymore. They follow universes. And honestly, if you think about it, this pressure exists way more intensely for women. Female pop stars are expected to constantly provide visual reinvention, fashion evolution, different creative performance concepts, and entire eras. Meanwhile, male artists are often allowed to exist much more statically. Take Ed Sheeran, for example. He can wear the same hoodie and hairstyle for 10 years and nobody questions whether he's still culturally relevant, except for maybe on his last album. But then you could actually tell that the issue was the music. And even Justin Bieber, who has been in the industry for over a decade now, was never really expected to constantly reinvent himself aesthetically in the same way female pop stars are. Sure, like his style evolved, the hair changed from time to time, the vibe changed a little depending on the era of his life, but did he ever really have to build an entire visual universe around himself to stay relevant? Well, not really. And one of the clearest examples of this was honestly Coachella. Seeing him side by side with Sabrina Carpenter as headliners was kind of fascinating, because Sabrina's performance felt like a fully constructed pop world. Everything was so curated and intentional. Meanwhile, Justin could sit on stage, play YouTube videos in the background, barely doing anything at all apart from singing along. And people were still absolutely loving it. And of course, it is also incredible if an artist can pull that off. But what would people have said about a female artist doing that? And honestly, I think that says a lot about the music industry itself. Because I really do not think we consume music the same way anymore. We consume artists through aesthetics first, through concert moments, through TikToks, through visuals before sound. An aesthetic becomes this shortcut that tells people who an artist is, what emotional category they belong to, and whether people should care about them, before the music even starts playing. Which is why talent often is not enough anymore, because talent takes time to notice, and aesthetic does not. And maybe that's why artists like Sabrina Carpenter and Chappell Roan feel so massive right now. Not because they are only talented artists, but because they created worlds people instantly understood and wanted to enter. But I'm curious what you think. Are we actually in a world where aesthetic matters more than talent? Or has pop always kind of been this way and social media just made it feel way more present? Well, anyways, thank you so much for watching.